Hey guys, it is Avatar 4 EVR here, and today I'm going to be doing a reading of the Ben Haunted Majora's Mask creepypasta by Deducible. This is going to be my first creepypasta reading, so I'm just going to read the story to you guys. It's going to take a few recording sessions, so let's begin. Ben, aka Haunted Majora's Mask, is a creepypasta and later an alternate reality game revolving around a Majora's Mask cartridge that is haunted by the ghost, if it is a ghost, of Ben. It is not to be confused with a different Majora's Mask creepypasta. On to the first paragraph. Post number 1, September 7th, 2010. Okay, I need your help with this. This is not copy pasta. This is a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and this is the creepiest stuff that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was shocked, to say the least, and I could finally play all of those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in at least a decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather broken copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can't be choosers, needless to say, it didn't take long until I became bored of beating up levels 9 CPUs. That weekend, I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the neighborhood when one last house caught my attention. I still have no idea why it did. There were no cars there, and only one table was set up with random junk on it, but something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of the car and I was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for a lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you asked me to tell you why I thought he was displeasing, I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on the edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there were other people within shouting distance, I would not have even thought of approaching this man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for, and I immediately noticed that he must be blind in one of his eyes. His right eye had that glazed over look about it. I forced myself to look to his left eye instead, trying not to offend, and asked him if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself from the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was. But to my surprise, he said he had a few old ones in an old box. He assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned to head back into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice what he was selling on his table. Littered across his table were rather peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason it looked almost like Majora's Mask, the same heart-shaped body with the spikes protruding outward. Initially, I thought that since I was secretly hoping to find that game at these garage sales, something was projecting itself into the ink blocks. But given the events that happened afterward, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I would have asked the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously when he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was the standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach as I realized what a coincidence this was and asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled at me and told me that I could have it for free, that it used to belong to a kid who was about my age that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the man phrased that, but I didn't really pay attention to it then. I was too caught up in not only finding this game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical since this looked like a pretty shady cartridge and there's no guarantee it would work, but then the optimist side of me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta version or pirated version of the game that all I needed to be back on cloud 9. I thanked the man smiled at me and wished me well, saying goodbye then. At least that's what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it worked just fine, and there was one save file named simply Ben. Goodbye, Ben, he was saying. Goodbye, Ben. I felt bad for the man. Obviously, grandparent, obviously going, something that we can't read. And I, for some reason or another, reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file, eyeballing it. I could tell that he was pretty far in the game. He had almost all of the masks and 3/4 remaining of the bosses. I noticed that he had used an owl statue to save his game. He was on day 3 and by the Stone Tower Temple with hardly an hour left before the moon would crash. I remember thinking that it was a shame that he had come so close to beating the game, but he had never finished it. I made a new file named Link out of tradition and started the game, ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady-looking game cartridge, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally, just like a retail copy of the game save, for a few minor hiccups here and there, like textures being where they weren't they should be, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, only one thing was a little unnerving. The only thing that was a little unnerving was that at times the NPCs would call me Link, and at other times they would call me Ben. I figured it was just a bug, a fluke in the programming causing our files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out, though, after a while. And it was around after I had beaten the Woodfall Temple that I regrettably went into the save files to delete Ben. I had intended to preserve the files just out of respect of the game's original owner. It's not like I needed 2 files anyway. Hoping that would solve the problem. It did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should be in the dialogue was just a blank space. My save file was still called Link, though. Frustrated and with homework to do, I put the game down for a day. Well, guys, that was the first few paragraphs of the Ben Drowned creepypasta, and I hope you enjoyed, and look out for the next few paragraphs, and I guess I'll see you later.